Michael, welcome to the program. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Benny. I got to say, everything you just said, you're just so on point. It was a delight to listen to you because you echo exactly what myself and so many other people are thinking right now.
Please, the floor is yours. We have you on here, obviously, as a subject matter expert. Part of the reason why everybody cares so much about this is that it just seemed too damn convenient that this living witness to so much of this corruption, whatever it ended up being, just dies in federal custody. On its face, Michael, and I'm not, please, I don't want to go on a rant here, but on its face, isn't that like possibly the biggest scandal that inside of the federal government's custody, inside of this maximum security prison, that he's able to kill himself? That alone is a horrible scandal that has no answer.
Well, yeah, Benny, and I don't believe that. Like you said in the opening here, I spent 7 months on that tier in that cell. And I've said this since day one. I just don't see how he committed suicide. It's almost impossible to do. You'd have to work so hard for so long, and number one, you don't have the time. You got cameras that are. I don't. In my experience, I don't ever remember those cameras going out. Number one. Number two, the COs are constantly walking the tier. I've said this to times when you're trying to use the toilet and they're opening up and looking in on you, especially when you had somebody like Epstein that was on suicide watch prior to that. They're going to watch him closely. And, inside the interior of the cell, there's just no mechanism for you to hang yourself. There's a low bunk. There's nothing on the ceiling. You'd have to be a midget, a little guy to try to, really work real hard. It's not possible. I don't see it. And I don't see the guy committing suicide anyway, but Benny, it's really time. The federal government has just been so corrupt and lying to us about so many of these issues. You only go back to COVID. You only have to go back 5 years to see all of these major issues that they just continue to cover up.
Yes.
I mean, again, without jumping all over, if you go to the Diddy matter, I had 3 racketeering cases, 3 of them, 3 RICO cases, one of them out of the Southern District of New York, prosecuted by Rudy Giuliani. First of all, you don't have a RICO with one defendant. I had 15 co-defendants in my first RICO. I had 9 on the second RICO, and I had 13 on the third RICO. You don't have one defendant in a RICO matter. And I said again all along in that case, this was not a RICO indictment. I don't see the jury convicting them on RICO because it's just not there. And the jury got it right. They were smart. They got it right. Did the federal government plan to have them get it right? Did they overcharge like they usually do purposely this time? I don't know. I think with the feds, especially in the Southern District, they think that they're so elite that they can just do anything and get away with it. That's the problem in some of these prosecutorial offices. But, I don't want to jump all over. You direct me where you want to go. But, I'm just so fed up with everything that they're doing. Really, it's, and Trump is doing the right thing because now all the conspiracy theories is, well, Trump is on the elite, on the Epstein, client list. And therefore, that's why he's covering it up. It's time to stop. Just put everything out there. The bottom line is, these are young girls that were trafficked. I just recently had Paul Hutchinson. I don't know if you know who Paul is. He's the fellow from Sound of Freedom. He was the guy that went over and rescued those 51 or 52 underage women, your girls, I should say. And it was highlighted in the movie. Some of the things that he told me, I don't scare very easy, but it made my hair stir on end. There are elite people in power that are abusing young women. And they're doing it consistently, and it's happening not only here in the United States, but all over the world. How do you cover something like this up? I mean, I have 5 daughters. I have granddaughters. I would go back to my mom days if somebody ever tried to do that to one of my children. I'm going to be honest with you. How do we allow this to happen? It's just terrible, and it has to stop. These people need to be held accountable so that it doesn't continue to happen. Paul says it's happening every day. It's happening in neighborhoods. Young kids are being trafficked. Sometimes their own family are trafficking them because they're getting paid such money for it. And this guy was very credible. I'm going to have him on again. Might somebody you want to consider, Benny, because it's just, we have to put a stop to this, bottom line.
So, Michael, that actually gets to the heart of the issue here, and that's right. Jeffrey Epstein's a dead pedophile, and I don't understand why anybody would want to protect a dead pedophile, or anybody who enabled him. And is he still operating today? No, there are people who are sex trafficking today, but he is the figurehead of a sex trafficking empire and a pederast empire, and so destroying at its very core what that empire was, who was facilitating it, and who was enabling it, will be a very strong sign for you to not do this, for anybody engaging in this, that it can happen to you. And I think that's why the issue is so important to a moral nation, if we still have that we don't pay taxes to pederast protectors. I think that's just the lowest possible bar, Michael, that you could ask for. Okay, so let's talk about low bars. I would just like to get into, maybe just do real quickly a breakdown, if you would, of the details of that prison cell. So you said you were on were you on the L tier block? You
Yes.
were in the same tier block as Epstein?
Yes.
So we have photos of the tier block, we have photos of the cell, and we're going to pop those up in no particular order. But maybe you could just explain what your experience was like in those cells and the perhaps physical impossibility of hanging yourself so severely that you would break your own neck bones, which is what they allege Epstein did.
Again, normally, I mean, I look, I never tried to commit suicide, but and I'll tell you this, when I was in there, I didn't see this ladder. I had a single bunk. I didn't have a double bunk like this because it was a single cell. But even there, I mean, it's just so difficult. You have to work hard to try to strangle yourself. This is not just an easy thing. That much I know. You got to work hard. I mean, you got to jump off something. You got to break your neck bone. You don't just hang there. And in that cell during my time, there was nothing to do to tie a sheet on that would enable you to do that. You just couldn't do it. You couldn't. And these are not high bunks. They're low bunks. Mm-hmm. They're not high. But and again, you got a camera on the cell. You got the CO opening the door constantly to look in on you, especially in a case where I was a high-profile inmate. For some reason, they looked on me all the time. I don't know why. But especially in the case of Jeffrey Epstein, who tried to commit suicide prior. He was on suicide watch. You're going to watch this guy closely unless they were told not to, unless there was something else going on at that time. I understand there was a minute or two. Of course, these things always seem to conveniently happen, that the camera wasn't working. I mean, come on. I mean, what are we back in fantasy land? These cameras work. I heard somebody say, well, the Bureau of Prison is in such bad shape that things are not working. Those things are working. Surveillance issues are working all the time. You don't get away with much in there. And
I have a question for all my friends and followers. Have you tried my wine yet? In the last 2 years, we've made tremendous progress with Franzese wine, and it's really all thanks to your support, and obviously because people are finding out we have a great wine at a great price. In 2025, we aim to become a national brand, and I want all of you to be a part of it. Every bottle you buy, every story you share builds more than a brand. It fuels a movement. The story of our wine is one of people having second chances and of lives being transformed. That's the truth. So go to my website, franzesewine.com, and get your bottle today. Salud, my friends.
Again, Benny, I just don't see it without getting into greater detail. And look, I have no horse in this race. If the guy committed suicide, hey, more power to him. Get rid of this guy. Look, I'm doing a deep dive on him today. I really went into this guy. He was just a bad guy. I mean, basically, he was blackmailing people. That's it. That was his currency. His currency was blackmail. He had, in his island, in every bedroom, he had cameras on the bedroom. They took thousands of tapes out of there. Who the heck knows who's on these tapes? But we know that they weren't poor people. They were people that went to that island for pleasure. It was Pleasure Island. That's what it was. And he was blackmailing all this. How did this guy become so wealthy? I mean, he was a school dropout. He wasn't even a smart guy. And all of a sudden, he's rolling with all of these people. Look, I can't get into this. There's theories that he was part of Mossad. And Benny, I want to tell you this too. You know, the CIA and the government, they will work with anybody that accomplishes their goals. They worked with us 3 times. And that's a fact. You know, they worked with Lucky Luciano. They worked with Meyer Lansky. You know, they worked with us when they wanted to get to Castro in Cuba. You know, they work with anybody they can to accomplish their purposes. So who knows what this guy did? But it's not good. And he was covering up for a lot of people. And again, this is innocent young girls that are being trafficked. We should never, in a moral society, in a civilized country like this, never allow this, no matter who it is. Let the chips fall where they fall.
Yes. So just a quick question on this photo that's pretty famous of Epstein's cell and all of the linens everywhere. Why would he be allowed? I mean, were you just given piles and piles and piles of linens like this every night? Is this normal? People have often said, like, wait, the guy's on suicide watch. Why does he have what looks like a laundromat in his cell?
Benny, absolutely not. You had to hope to get a blanket because it was cold in there. You know, absolutely not. This is ridiculous. This is like a setup. What would he be doing with that? They only gave you 1 set of clothing. That's it. You had nothing in the cell. The cells were barren, basically. You had nothing in there. And remember, this is not prison. These are jails. You know, you're awaiting trial or awaiting something. This is a jail cell. It's not a prison cell. In a prison, you have a little bit more conveniences because that's going to be your home for a while. A jail cell, you can be moved around. They don't give you any of these conveniences. You're lucky you get a blanket. If you do get to it's like this thin, you know, to cover yourself. You have nothing in there. These are barren cells. So when I saw that, I said, what the heck is all of that, you know, in there? This guy, nothing seems right. Nothing seems right here, according to my experience.
Michael, they said he hung himself from that little rope right there. They said that's where they cut him down from, right there on that, and on the lower bunk, actually, not even on the top bunk, on the lower bunk, which I don't know. I've never been there, but it seems like it's only a couple feet off the ground. Based on your experience in a, you know, in a rough and tumble crime environment, and based on, I guess, what we've shown on this program, which is a lot of doctors saying that it's really hard to break your own neck, like under your own strength. Like it's really hard unless you're jumping off a building to really break your own neck. I mean, do you think that's possible to like shatter bones in your own neck from inside of one of these cells?
No. Look, I would state definitely it's not, especially, do you see who he's hanging from? What was he doing? Sitting down, trying to choke himself? He wasn't a short guy, that short of a guy. But how you do that? Yeah, in order to break that bone, you got to jump. You got to work hard. And I hate to say this, but look, I came from the street. I saw a lot of things happen. You know, you don't do it that easily. It's not easy, you know, to strangle. It's not easy to strangle somebody else. It's even more difficult to strangle yourself. This is not it. This is a setup to have these clothes in there. It's absolutely ridiculous. Somebody needs to explain what they were doing in there.
Yes.
I'm telling you, Benny, you get one thing to wear. That's it. Nothing else. They don't give you anything else.
So that's obviously very strange. Could you just, final question on this, and here's the outside of the cell and what it looks like on the actual tier block, the L tier block. And can you explain, like, what do you think happened then exactly, Michael? Like, do you think that another inmate was allowed into Jeffrey Epstein's cell? We have some questions about, like, a serial strangler who was a bodybuilder who was housed with Jeffrey Epstein. Seems like maybe we could just ask this guy a couple questions, but we've never gotten a list of names of who he was with. You know, on the tier block, we've never gotten a list of people that he was bunked with, that were inside the cell with him. We've gotten, you know, nothing. We don't even know the names of the guards, right? It's crazy.
No, we don't know anything. And listen, they could have let somebody in there.
Here's the guy. Here's the guy, by the way. He just happens to be a serial strangler who's being held with Epstein that night.
Yeah, I don't think he'd have too much trouble in taking care of Epstein, but you know, who knows? 2 minutes of the tape are gone. You know, again, everything is always so shady, Benny. Always. You never get proper answers. And you know, I'm so happy because I was a little look, I'm a Trump supporter. I support his policies, no question about it. But I was a little disappointed When I saw the remark he made from his, when they were talking to him that day for that cabinet session that he had, and he said, "Why are we still talking about this creep?" And I think just for a moment he forgot, because this creep, is involved in the trafficking of young girls, and there are more people involved, and they need to be held accountable for it. That's the bottom line. So the fact that he's calling for a special investigation is, I'm so happy. I really
Yes.
am. On
Yes.
all of these things. I mean, all of these things, we never get the right answers. We don't know about Kennedy, And look, I don't want to get into another session on Kennedy, but there was stuff that happened there that I know for a fact, and it's being hidden for what, 50, 60 years now? We never get the right answers. But this one, more than anything else, we should, because there's young girls.
So Michael, since you brought up Kennedy, why not go there? Because we have some breaking news on Kennedy that happened over the last week, that the CIA has finally clawed out of their cold, dead hands, begrudgingly admitted that they bumped Oswald, right? That the CIA was actively involved in surveilling and or interacting with Lee Harvey Oswald. And at that point, you just have to assume that Oswald was an asset for the CIA. And then, of course, lo and behold, we get this article that was dug up from 25 years ago, where Jeffrey Epstein was bragging about being a CIA agent in the Weekly Standard here. And boy, man, it just seems that all roads tend to lead to dirty intel ops. A question ago, you said that the intelligence agencies have contacted you and your criminal organization back in the day. Here's the Epstein article, by the way, in black and white. Epstein bragging about being a CIA agent. Of course, he later denied it, right? Okay. Maybe you could shed some light on this style of operations of the intel community using organized crime.
Well, I can tell you this, and this is something I've heard my entire life, and understand something. My father was there throughout all of this, and my father was a pretty important guy. He was the underboss of the Colombo family at that time. So from my father to the boss of the family to everybody that would have been in the know of an operation like this, I've heard consistently the same thing. And here's the thing. I've said from day one, those classified documents, I don't think they'll ever be released. And if they are, they're going to be highly redacted, because we were involved in the assassination with JFK. And this government is never going to want the world to know that a sitting president was able to be assassinated in part by the mob. And I think they'll cover that up forever. And here's the key. Jack Ruby, I read something from the commission report that they said he had no connections to organized crime. Jack Ruby was connected to us from the days of Al Capone. He was connected heavily in Chicago. He was connected heavily in New Orleans. He ran strip clubs and places for Carlos Marcello in Dallas, Texas. He was very well connected with us, 100%. And that's how he got into that police station. Here's what happened. And this is, and I know people are going to deny this, and they're going to say it's a conspiracy theory, and it's not. This is what I've heard consistently all along. The Kennedy-Nixon campaign, Kennedy won that. It was razor thin. They absolutely came to us. Joe Kennedy, who was absolutely a bootlegger, no question about it. Frank Costello wanted to kill him at one time because of some things that he did that were nefarious. Okay, they came to us for Illinois to help Kennedy win in Illinois. That was the swing state. We did that. The deal was that they were supposed to back off of organized crime. Robert Kennedy, forget it. He doesn't do that. He comes on organized crime even heavier than the FBI did. Because remember, the FBI for a while, they would never even admit that the mafia existed. J. Edgar Hoover didn't admit to it. All of a sudden, Kennedy goes on a rampage. So we hated the Kennedys because of that. They come to us, and here's the thing. I don't know what initially started, why they wanted to kill John Kennedy. I can't talk about that. But I will say this. They absolutely came to us to have Ruby assassinate Oswald. And that's how it went down.
Who's
100%.
they?
I believe it was the CIA, because that's what I was told. And again, I don't like to repeat something unless I'm 100%, but I believe it was the CIA. Wasn't a name, but my father told me, look, the government's involved in this. CIA came to us. Persico told me this. They all said the same thing. They were very consistent. At different times, I've heard this. And I didn't inquire. It was just in conversation that came up. We talked about it. Look, what's his name from Chicago's on tape saying, we killed the wrong Kennedy. That's on tape. We killed the wrong Kennedy because Bobby came at us. They cover that up. I don't want to hear that. We killed the wrong Kennedy. It's on tape.
So as the story goes and as the evidence points to Lee Harvey Oswald, who consistently claimed and screamed on camera that he was a patsy, and the near impossibility of JFK dying in the way that the official story portends. And again, it's kind of the same elements, right, with Epstein, which is the official stories make no sense. And the evidence certainly doesn't point to the official story being true, and so you have to just assume that somebody with power is trying to lie to you. And now we get all this evidence that has been released about JFK. The constellation is starting to come together. But who then do you think killed? I mean, do you think that Kennedy was actually killed by the CIA, and then the mob was there to cover it up?
Yes, that's what I was consistently told. Yes. Yeah. Do you know that they lost Kennedy's brain?
Oh yeah, yeah. They doctored his entire body. Yeah, his body's not real. Like the autopsy is not real.
Yeah. So why do they do that? Why would you do something like that unless you're covering up something? I mean, it's just common sense. Why? How can you lose the president's brain? And like you said, the whole body being doctored up. Why? What are you hiding?
The doctor who did the autopsy is still alive. He's very old, and he was in Congress, and he was testifying before Congress and said that there was a bullet wound that he saw in Dallas from the front. It's clearly like an entry wound and an exit wound in the back. Yeah. And a guy in the Texas School Book Depository can't shoot from the front. That's just pretty basic. Like 3-year-old can understand those physics. And so
what does it say, Benny? It tells us that from going way back, as far as we go back in our generation, to Kennedy, to COVID, to you just name it, we just never get the truth. Everything is covered up. And you don't cover things up unless there's elite people involved that you're covering for. They're not going to cover for me. They're not going to cover for you. They're going to cover for their own. Yes.
And that's why I think this issue is so important, because all these Kennedy guys, they're dead, and they're like the guys who did Kennedy, they're dead, right? And they can't be prosecuted or put in jail. They lived their lives out and got their pensions and their gold watches, and they're done. Now 70 years later, their children are grandparents, right? You can't charge anyone,
right?
But you could charge people still with Epstein. Epstein plotted only a couple of years ago. And you could still technically uncover some damaging things and destroy some very evil people. And that's what makes it so kinetic, I think.
Well, listen, you know what? If they continue to cover this kind of stuff up, I think every American citizen should be outraged at this. And we should just continue to put pressure on them and demand that there's accountability here. Because, again, what Paul Hutchinson told me, the extent of human trafficking of young boys and girls, both. He said it's so out of control. And he had a lot of credibility when I spoke to him. He's dedicated his life to this for the last 10 years. Guy's got a lot of money. He's very wealthy. He's able to do this. And it's a cause that's really become so important to him. And the extent of things that he told me, it's horrific.
Yeah.
It's horrific, Benny. There's nothing worse than pedophilia. I mean, it's terrible. Benny, do you know this? Do you know that when they have a menu, the people that are doing this human trafficking, they have a menu of sexual services that would be formed by these young girls, and how much you would have to pay for each service. It's that disgusting. How do you cover this up? How do you cover an Epstein up?
You can't, and it's not morally justifiable, and so you have to fight against it, and you have to do you have to live in a very simple binary. Luckily, I went to community college, Michael, so I'm not, it's very easy for me to just see the simple binary and to say, this is wrong. This is darkness versus light. This is good versus evil. And this is how we actually get to the bottom of it, right? By continuing to apply pressure. And I want to use Epstein as an example for people to not do this. And if we can destroy Epstein and his entire network and punish them, then that's a good warning sign, right? Like that's deterrence on some level. And I think that's morally justifiable.
I can tell you this, Benny. I think, a key person in here is that Ghislaine Maxwell. Yeah. They got to bring her in front of Congress, and they got to put her under oath, and she's got to talk. You know what I believe? I'm gonna go even further. I think they got a hold of her and told her, listen, you saw what happened to Epstein. You're going to do some time in prison. Keep your mouth shut. You'll get out of here, and this will blow over. Don't put it past the government to talk to her like that and to scare her and into keeping her quiet. They should bring her and they should put pressure on her because she knows a lot, obviously.
Yeah. Well, she was invited. She had the row of honor at Bill Clinton's daughter's wedding. Very curious there. She's photographed on the throne of the King and Queen of England with Kevin Spacey, which is so strange. And we'd sure like to hear, like, why exactly. And she's a living piece of evidence. And I think that scares a lot of people.
Yeah.
We hope that that happens. Michael, we hope that you join the program. Again, you can follow Michael, of course, here. 100,000 plus Americans follow Michael. He also has a great wine company. Michael, I look forward to trying some of your products one of these days. But
Well, Benny,
Franzese wine.
I'm going to make sure we send you a case. You're going to enjoy it for sure.
All right, my man. Everybody follow Michael right here. And one day, man, I'm gonna have your chain. I'm gonna have your chain game. Okay, one of these days. Be a slightly different look for the show, but I'm gonna go.
Well, Benny, there's significance. People think I don't wear bling, but there's significance to each one of these, and they're very dear to me. So that's the only reason I put them on. I promised I'd wear them, and that's it.
my man. We'll cover that one. We'll do a full Michael Franzese bling segment soon. But we're out of time for today. Godspeed, man. Thank you for illuminating for our audience some of this darkness.
Well, thanks for having me. And Benny, please keep it up, man. We love your voice out there, and just keep it up. We need you.